A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
Adolf Januszkiewicz, seeing the future. A new motherland. Another Kunanbai. Nineveh of the steppe. When prophecies come true.
I really do not know if I can open a second Nineveh. Nineveh? What is that? A person who is older, obviously with Asian features, asked in surprise. This is an ancient city. Karakorum. His conversation partner inhaled the fresh steppe air and smiled. What a beauty. Remember my words, Kunanbai. One day this place will become the very center of the whole steppe region. Two riders, good friends, were a little behind the caravan. The outline of a newly built fortress could be seen far away on the shores of the Ishim. They had almost arrived. A Kazakh bey and a Polish rebel, a real story with real characters, who predicted the future of Astana, Adolf Januszkiewicz. Januszkiewicz writes, "Here is Akmola, the future capital of the Great Steppe." These words by Januszkiewicz were prophetic. As for the scientific development of Siberia in the 19th century, this was largely due to their exiles. Chapter 1. A New Motherland. Surprisingly, his whole life is full of fulfilled prophecies. Warsaw, one of the most beautiful promenade streets, is the Krakow suburb. A monument to the poet Mickiewicz. Adolf and Adam were friends. Januszkiewicz, the Polish poet, was the hero of Mickiewicz's poem, Dziady. I would compare the eyes of the sufferer and the eyelashes to the windows of the dungeons, says the hero of the poem written by Adolf. In a few years, Adolf himself will be a prisoner. However, everything started quite happily. His parents were noblemen under Prince Radziwill. A large inheritance was left to him, and he could have disposed of it in any way so his life could be luxurious. He was born in 1803, studied at the literature department, wrote poetry, danced the mazurka, and became a deputy of the Seimas. He was waiting for a brilliant career. He was going to marry and believed in the free future of Poland. Adolf couldn't say a way. 1830 was the Warsaw Revolt. It had been prepared for a long time, and the main goal was the separation of the Kingdom of Poland from Russia. But a year later, the uprising was crushed. An identity was imposed on Poland. Brutal censorship was introduced. A fortress was built in Warsaw, the cannons of which looked not from the city, but at the city itself. And deep into the Russian Empire, the first carts with Polish rebels went to Siberia. Most of the Polish intellectual elite went to Siberian exile or emigrated to the West. Adolf Januszkiewicz did not manage to emigrate. He was wounded 7 times in battles with Russian troops. He lost consciousness, fell from his horse, and was captured. During interrogation, he behaved bravely, but he didn't repeat anything and he was sentenced to death. Later, it was replaced with a lifelong exile. Settlement in Siberia, deprivation of noble rights and privileges. He was sent to the north to a forgotten place where he didn't marry anyone. Instead, he owned a range of health problems. Then, Ishim, northern Kazakhstan, the village of Zhelyakovka, which is near Petropavlovsk. There are a lot of Poles in the northern Kazakhstan region. He tries to find fellow countrymen and arrange his life. He plants fruit trees and garden, corresponding with his family and his bride Stephanie, who for a long time intended to come to him, but Adolf did not want his fate for her and asked for the engagement ring back. For almost a quarter of a century, over 600 letters, he also learned Kazakh and fell in love with his new homeland. He even dressed according to the steppe traditions, and he used to say, "Gradually, I was transforming into Kyrgyz, and the yurt became an ordinary house for him." When I happened to race along the steppe on a good horse, I experienced an inexplicable joy.
I sing, my heart flares up, I feel touched. I remember my family. I dream like in the dream of my youth. Adolf Januszkiewicz. Since 1841, Adolf served in Omsk as the secretary of the committee on the project of Kyrgyz law. He traveled a lot around the Kazakh steppes. Chapter 2. Another Kunanbai. I moved through the high mountains inhabited by bears, morals and deer, swimming across rivers unknown in Europe, and over them for the first time in 12 years, I heard the sweet songs of the nightingale. I saw Kyrgyz tribes wandering in 1,000 or more yurts for 25 miles, covered with shoals of horses, camels, rams, and cattle of wonderful beauty. Adolf Januszkiewicz. The space of the endless steppe simply fascinated him. I breathe in the aroma like an Arab in the desert, wrote Januszkiewicz. He accurately describes the traditions of Kazakhs. During the holiday, I heard the Ulanshi. These are the Kyrgyz troubadours, the bards of the steppes, the great poets whose improvisations, as well as the talent of performance, involuntarily took me back to the Middle Ages. For only there, under the stone arches of the Gothic castle of a powerful baron, could I find the Kyrgyz yurt. Adolf Januszkiewicz. And with surprise, I applauded the speakers who had never heard of Demosthenes and Cicero, and today these poets in front of me amaze me with their talents. Januszkiewicz admired their talents. He not only admired this life, he described the life of ordinary people. He wrote how he likes this territory, how he likes the people who live here. Of the most admiringly mentioned, Sultan Barak, not the one who killed Abul Khair Khan, and Bey Kunanbai. When exactly Adolf Januszkiewicz met the father of the poet Abai is unknown, but they communicated often. You could say they were on friendly terms. He was also at the winter residence of Kunanbai and played with a one-year-old boy, the son of Kunanbai. And who was the one-year-old son of Kunanbai in 1846? It was Abai. Januszkiewicz played with Abai. Moreover, according to legend, Januszkiewicz saved Abai from imminent death. He simply cured him. It's unclear if it's true or not. It's known only that Adolf Januszkiewicz really treated many people in the steppe. He himself writes about this in his diaries. And in them, Kunanbai is a completely different person. Kunanbai is shown quite differently by Januszkiewicz than he is shown in the novel by Mukhtar Oezov. He's not difficult or rude. On the contrary, he's very intelligent, very interesting person. He was a judge who was truly incorruptible. And when Januszkiewicz gives details on the general methods of Kunanbai's management, you can only marvel at it. He was entrusted by a strong kind of tabakti, elected to the post of parish governor, and he performed it with rare skill and energy. Once he was a handsome man, and then there were small pock marks on his face. During an inspired speech, he made listeners forget about his disfigured face. From Adolf Januszkiewicz. Kunanbai gained the glory of the prophet. The young, the old, the rich, and the poor rushed to him. And each and every one of his orders is executed literally with a nod of the head, as Januszkiewicz wrote. And of all the beys, the rich are unworthy to untie the strap on the shoes of Kunanbai. Chapter 3. Nineveh of the Steppe. In Semey, built on the site of the destroyed Zhongar cities, the population is about 7,000 people. Most of the population includes Tatars, people of Tashkent and Bukhara. Therefore, in the city there are 6 or 7 mosques and 1 church. The Kazakh language is used everywhere. Half of the excessively cultured Russian population in these parts freely speak the language, as our lovely ladies speak French. Adolf Januszkiewicz. From Omsk through Semipalatinsk and Ayaguz to the spurs of the Jongar Range, Lake Alakol and Baltash, this journey lasted about half a year. On the shore of the Ishim, a monument to Kenesari Kasimov, the very center of Eurasia, Astana. But almost 200 years ago, this place looked very different. Just steppe, river, and a small fortification known as Akmola. Akmola is a sacred place. Here is the river Ishim, Isil as it practically unites the river Nura. There are two rivers. If you look at the map, the most beautiful pastures were at the junction of these two rivers. The path of the government commission under the leadership of General Vishnevsky lay through Akmola. The delegation from Russia went to a meeting with 5 or 6 sultans. These are the last sultans of the Kazakh steppe who signed their entry into the Russian Empire. Another important mission of the expedition was to enlist the support of the sultans in the struggle against the rebellious Khan Kenesari. Before Vishnevsky, the task was still to hold a meeting of the elders and beys of the senior Juz, so that they could sign a joint petition regarding the confrontation with Kenesari Kasimov. Yanushkevich was at the very center of historical events, communicated with everybody who took part in this steppe congress. Adolf was involved as a person who knew the Kazakh language very well. Kunanbai was appointed as guardian of his large delegation from Russia. He was a great storyteller with a unique memory, according to Yanushkevich. And Kunanbai says, "Where did the sultans come from? There is a legend. A boat was sailing along the river, and inside was a box. Not a box, but a large chest. And in this chest, a hunter shoots. When he shoots out, the daughter of the swan, Aku, comes out, and he marries her." Yanushkevich writes down what he sees around him, what is happening to him, and what Kunanbai tells him. In a century and a half, these records will become the most important source of Kazakhstan's history. Kyrgyz through Kustau, that is winter pastures. After a few months, they put yurts frozen to the ground on camels' humps, and with all the property, and with herds of horses and goats and sheep, start a long journey that will end only with the arrival of the frost. Day of universal joy. Earlier, a sad, smoke-smothered Kyrgyz with a cheerful face sits down on the best horse and with a dashing look wins on it among those who've marched on the campaign. Adolf Yanushkevich. It is on this trip that the Polish poet writes in his diary words that, after 150 years, will be considered prophetic. Akmola is the future center and the capital of the Kazakh steppe. The first half of the 19th century was the time of archaeological discoveries. The biblical city of Nineveh was found in Iraq. Yanushkevich is looking for his Nineveh on the steppe. The Mongolian city of Karakorum, and is going to write a paper about the origin of the Kazakh people, which is foretold by the great future. The people who are gifted by the Creator with such abilities cannot remain alien to civilization. Its spirit will penetrate someday into the Kyrgyz deserts, inflate the sparkle of light here, and the time will come when the nomad who roams today will take an honorable place among all people. Adolf Yanushkevich. In 1856, Nikolai I died, and deleted the name of Yanushkevich from the list of pardoned people every year, and Adolf returned home after 24 years of exile. The return was not joyful. His bride had not waited for him. He had serious health problems, and a year later, the revolutionary romanticist, ethnographer, and poet Adolf Yanushkevich died of tuberculosis. He was not distant to find an ancient city and write a book about the history of Kazakhs. Epilogue, when prophecies come true. A century and a half later, in Astana, the Ishim's sun reflects on the Yesil River. The spicy smells of the steppe attract the attention, and the following lines are also relevant. Only in these parts, perhaps, one can observe the trends that are observed in the United States of America. For Europe, with a multinational population, this phenomenon is unfamiliar. as if new settlements are emerging from the ground like mushrooms. For example, Akmola is the future capital of the entire steppe region. Adolf Januszkiewicz.